1,000 miles away, in a land far, far away, lies all of my data. How and why is this the case though? Well, I'm sure that everybody's faced it, the dreaded, yo, yeah, you're out of storage message. I really don't understand why we're given like only 5 to 15 gigabytes as a free plan size, you know. But hey, similar to salaries, food costs, and subscriptions, our file sizes have just ballooned while our storage allocations given to us by cloud storage providers have remained exactly the same. In my case, I had a Google Pixel. And if you know, back in the day, they used to have free photo storage in Google Photos. Completely free. You could store anything you wanted. The moment they took that away, I immediately filled up my 15 gigabytes within maybe a few months. Then I bought a Google One subscription for 100 gigabytes. I filled that up within about a year as well. Now, besides me, not taking pictures of my food anymore, this left me with two options. I had to keep paying the subscription and paying more and more money, or I had to figure out something new. And because I apparently enjoy making things much harder than they actually need to be, today all of my photos, files, and backups live in a server that is 1,000 miles away from me. It's all sitting in an old PC that's all the way back in my family's house in Bermuda. And somehow it still works. I don't know how. This is the story of why and how I made my home lab, home server, whatever you want to call it. And why I encourage anybody with solid technical skills or who wants to learn solid technical skills to build their own. And even if you don't want to deal with all the technical stuff, investing in some sort of network attached storage for your home may still prove to be valuable. The truth is that this is a project that I tried and actually failed at, and it mainly is just because I overcomplicated it. When content about super techie stuff like this is presented online, it's usually portrayed in a technical manner for technical people, present day, present time. This is fine and all, but I feel that it excludes people who are A, not very experienced, or B, just need something that works and doesn't really care about what's going on under the hood. I mostly fell into the first category, and I'm making this mainly for the second category so that they can see that this really isn't something that's so hard after. Though I understand that a lot of people just watch these videos because it's interesting, and don't worry, I got something for y'all too. When it comes to the hardware, there are two routes that you can take with this: the pre-made route and the more DIY route. It's similar to the dilemma of having a pre-built PC versus building your own. Buying a pre-made NAS or network attached storage, once again, for your home is obviously a lot more convenient, and it almost eliminates the possibility of bugs breaking your server. But it costs more money and you lose out on the freedom to add more functionality. If you need something that's a whole lot of files that is also accessible and convenient, unlike something like a hard drive, then this is pretty good. The DIY route has a much higher ceiling in terms of adding functionality, customizability, and is overall just cheaper. But the learning curve is pretty steep, and it also requires a significant time investment. This is the route I took, but I understand it's probably not for everyone. To make your own server, let me repeat, you do not need a server rack. You do not need to own a data center. You don't need a NASA supercomputer. And you don't even need to have a strong computer at all. The only thing I say that you need is 8 gigabytes of RAM and a very large amount of storage, preferably something over 512 gigabytes. I made a video over my fairly dated and low spec Linux PC that I had and got for $45 on eBay. And yes, if you watch that video, this is the same exact computer. It was originally meant to be a home server, and now it's fulfilling its intended purpose. A big thing that you have to worry about when you make a home server of any sort is power consumption. If you cancel multiple subscriptions, but then the computer that you use to make your home server on is some RTX 5080 i9 super NASA computer Dyson Sphere universal simulation machine, then you're probably going to be negating all the savings that you would normally have because of the insane power usage you get from that computer. Since that all matters to me, I took out the old crappy graphics card that was in there and I switched the operating system to only run on oh my god, I can't speak today. Integrated graphics, or integrated. This way I saved a lot of power, and the graphics card that I had in there was actually so weak that taking it out had a marginal impact on the performance of the computer. Speaking of power, the giant battery that's underneath the desk ended up becoming one of the most important parts of the entire project. My server lives in Bermuda, and Bermuda gets hurricanes. And because my computer has some weird issue where the BIOS occasionally thinks that the CPU fan is dead on restart despite it actually working completely fine, I cannot afford to have random power outages shutting down my entire cloud storage. I really need to figure out what the actual issue is there and maybe replace the fan. But in any case, I hooked it up to this giant 1500 watt hour battery to prevent that issue. Since I left, there actually has been one power outage, and the server remained on for over a day despite the internet being completely off. When the power came back on, it simply just reconnected back to the Wi-Fi and kept on going. I was able to completely use it. Nothing changed. No data loss. No need to manually turn it back on either. My server has been running continuously since January 10th of this year, and it is currently June the 19th. With how efficient the server is and the size of the battery, it can last for about 3 days. This right here is the moment that I realized this setup was reliable, okay? I want to say the power outage happened around March. We're still going. I mean, like 3 months later. It's been 6 months since I set up the server. Honestly, just go for something that is weak and power efficient. It'll handle enough and it'll save you. The operating system has changed a bit. I upgraded to Debian 13. I actually pretty much turned off most of the desktop environment, and I also only use the server via the terminal now, but I promise it's not as scary as it looks. For the senior home labbers out there, I considered Proxmox back when I was first trying this in 2023, but I thought it'd be a little too overkill for my usage. Plus, I still like having a regular computer when I'm at home. So the software side of this is actually a lot simpler than it looks. At the bottom is Debian Linux, which is the operating system running on the computer. On top of that, I use Docker to keep all my applications separate and organized. Then there's Tailscale, which is possibly the most important part of the setup. This is what allows me to securely access a server from anywhere in the world without exposing it to the internet and whoever wants to mess around with my data. The end result is that I can go to a library, a coffee shop, I can go to my apartment, I can go to the freaking back freezer of a Walmart and sit next to all the ice cream and stuff and be able to just connect the Tailscale and immediately access all of my files that are over 1,000 miles away. I know Google Drive and cloud storage might not sound like the most exciting thing, but when you really picture this, I have a computer running all the way on an island far away, halfway across the world. Freaking Straw Hat Pirates might be blocking the way there or something like that. And then I can immediately have access to all of my photos I've ever taken. It's a sick idea. It's a sick idea. Maybe I'm hyping this up a little too much, but I really like it. On screen, I'm just going to show a small diagram of the system structure, if this explains things a little better. Though occasionally I do access it via the command line, just do all sorts of random stuff. A lot of times when I was bored between lectures and stuff like that, I just log into the server for no reason and play 2048. It's not the greatest use of time looking back on it, but it's a good proof of concept. I was doing work, okay? Setting up Nextcloud kind of had a honeymoon phase in which I was in awe of all the cool stuff and just the novelty of accessing the server from 1,000 miles away. But now it's kind of just boring, and I think that's a good thing. I use it regularly, and most days I don't even think about the fact that I'm running it myself. It's one of those things that I need to, just work. And on the topic of photos, there is a huge debate over what's the best self-hosted platform. This is because in response to platforms like Google Photos having the ability to recognize objects and faces in your photos, a lot of these open source self-hosted alternatives have actually started to add their own versions of AI photo recognition. Now, out of all of them, honestly, I just wanted to keep everything within one app. In this case, I wanted all my storage to be done by Nextcloud. So I decided to choose this program called Nextcloud Memories. This way, I could host my own Photos app that even compares to Google Photos in some ways. The main X factor here is this little add-on that I put into Nextcloud Memories, and it's just called Recognize. Honestly, anybody who's running Nextcloud Memories, this program, kind of needs to install this particular add-on. This allows the app to recognize faces and tag photos with keywords based on what the AI model recognizes. This took me forever to set up because it required me to go outside of the Nextcloud app and change things in the entire server, server-wide stuff. But when I did, it was worth it. Now I get some of the benefits of Google Photos and also some of the benefits of having my photos on a regular hard drive. No programming needed at all. Okay, so these are the problems I faced, and oh boy, this is about to be long. Building a home server will expose you to the most insane, weird, and just outright random breakages and errors you could ever find in a computer. Here are some of them that I faced. Let me present to you Exhibits A, NVIDIA drivers and the operating system update. Alright, so if you've used Linux, you know where this is going. NVIDIA and Linux do not play well together, and it was a pain to get my NVIDIA graphics card to work on my old Debian 12 install. When I upgraded to the newer version of my operating system, I found out that the card was so old that the drivers weren't even being supported anymore, and I just disabled them completely. And disabling it ended up making the entire operating system stop working. My whole desktop environment crashed, and I was left with a command line only interface that took me 2 days to fix. Eventually, I got it working without the NVIDIA drivers, or I just started using the open source off-brand NVIDIA drivers. I don't actually remember. In any case, what I ended up finding out is that it was better to just remove the graphics card entirely. I'm pretty sure I said this earlier in the video, but it saved a lot of power and there was a negligible performance impact, so I just ripped the whole thing out. And then I set my computer to run only on the integrated graphics, so the CPU itself. I'm glad I figured that out before I left the island, 6 months ago, because otherwise I would definitely be worrying about NVIDIA drivers breaking my whole system. And also I'd be wasting a whole lot more power. And now Exhibit B. The system manager, a program named Cron, deciding to not allow my photo recognition program to work correctly. So Cron essentially schedules jobs and automates things. When it is a certain program's turn, Cron will essentially go to that program and ask, hey, any jobs to run? And the program will go ahead and do its thing. So this goes back to Nextcloud Memories and the whole AI photo recognition and tagging software named Recognize. Recognize depends on Cron, and Cron wasn't doing its job. I mean, it was a really dysfunctional organization right here. All the fries were burning, there's a giant line of customers out there, getting angry, and nobody was there to service them. Cron was still automating every other job it was supposed to on the server, but it wasn't doing this for the newly added Recognize. Meaning that essentially, Recognize never got any space in the schedule to run over and over again, maybe every 5 or 10 minutes, and actually analyze all my photos. It just wasn't able to do anything. It was never given a slot in the task schedule to actually do its work, and it was just all forgotten and stuff. And man, I felt bad. I genuinely, I was ashamed of myself for letting this just go on. Okay, anyway, first I had to go into Cron's file and add an extra line. Then I had to run a command to make Cron run manually rather than the typical automated stuff that it does. Finally, I just had to wait for Recognize to go ahead and do its photo recognition thing. And while I was doing this, I was actually able to go under the hood into the terminal line and see that half my CPU was being used up by PHP, like a PHP program, like the programming language. I can't imagine how loud the computer was in my room at the time. And to reduce the load on my computer, I actually had to limit how many photos it was able to classify at once. I think I limited it to around 100 photos per job. I was able to go under the hood and see what Recognize was doing. It was marking all of my photos and tagging them, organizing whatever it found. In other words, I was literally watching my own private Google Photos machine learning model organize and recognize my photos in real time. However, this data was local and only accessible by me. This was another one of those moments where self-hosting finally felt worth the effort. I also spent way too much time fighting HTTPS certificates and port configurations. Networking is bro. It's one of those things where you feel incredibly smart, while you're understanding the concepts up until you actually have to do something or configure something. Eventually I got it working well enough for my needs and I decided to just leave it alone after that. I've had plenty more problems. Okay, there's a lot more exhibits to look at. This museum goes back really far, but I'm not going to bring up every individual one. Because honestly, building a home server is a never-ending process of fixing one problem and then immediately discovering another one. But eventually all of those little fixes start adding up. One day you look around and you realize that you built the thing that you were actually trying to build, even if it does have little issues here and there. Granted, my Google Docs replacement thing is broken again, so don't ask me for life advice, but everything else works for the most part, and I'm not the most responsible in my server, maybe. In the future, I want to expand beyond simple storage and add more applications to the server. I don't want it to just be cloud storage, but I want it to be a full-on, always-on machine that can do whatever I need, whenever I need it, wherever I need it. This is where I want to transition it from a home server to a full home lab. I'll leave Nextcloud and such for its utilitarian purposes, but I want to install more programs and, play around more stuff that may or may not blow up in my face for no other reason than that I'm interested in it and I want to learn. I really like the freedom that I get from doing this. And somehow, so far, I haven't had to program anything. If you like this, subscribe, just press any of the buttons down there and, leave me a comment because I read pretty much every single comment I get. See you around. It works! It works! It works! Don't worry about the football game back there. It works! It works!